Imagine knowing exactly when you are going to die. It is September 12th, 1897. The northwest frontier of India. Outside the tiny signaling post of Saragarhi, the dust is rising. 10,000 Afghan tribesmen are marching up the mountain. Inside the fort, there are no armies, no reinforcements, just 21 men of the 36th Sikh Regiment. The math was impossible. 500 enemies for every one defender. By all military logic, they should have surrendered. They should have run. But as the British historian, Major General James Lunt, later wrote, these men were about to fight a battle that would pass into history as one of the greatest last stands of all time. They had 400 rounds of ammunition each. They had their faith, and they had a promise to never retreat. This is the story of the Battle of Saragarhi, and this is how they died. To understand the violence that was about to unfold, you have to look at the men standing on that wall. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were the 36th Sikhs, and in 1897, there was perhaps no warrior on earth more feared or more disciplined than a Khalsa Sikh. Look at their names. Every single one of the 21 men inside Saragarhi had the last name Singh. In their language, it means lion. This wasn't just a name. It was a description. They carried the sacred symbols of their faith. On their wrists, they wore the kara, a bracelet of solid steel. It served two purposes. First, it was a spiritual reminder that they were bound to God. But in a hand-to-hand brawl, that heavy steel ring turned a human fist into a mace. Leading them was Havildar Ishar Singh. History describes him as a bit of a maverick. He was wild, independent, and stubborn. But on this day, that stubbornness was exactly what the empire needed. But outside the walls, the wolves were gathering. The Pashtun tribes were the masters of this terrain. If the Sikhs were the hammer, the Pashtuns were the mist. A Pashtun warrior could wrap himself in a gray wool blanket and vanish into the rocks just 10 yards in front of you. He could wait for hours, motionless as a stone, waiting for the perfect shot. And they had the perfect weapon for it, the Jezzail. To a British soldier, the Jezzail looked like a museum piece. Handmade, decorated with mother of pearl. It looked ancient, but it was deadly. A standard British rifle was accurate up to 400 yards. The Jezzail, a skilled marksman, could take your head off from 800 yards away. So this wasn't just a battle over a signaling post. This was a collision of two of the world's greatest warrior cultures, the unbreakable discipline of the Khalsa versus the ferocious independence of the Pashtun. At 9:30 a.m., the silence broke. Havildar Ishar Singh looked at his signalman, Gurmukh Singh, and gave a single nod. The message flashed out. Enemy, approaching the main gate. Need permission to engage. The reply came back moments later. Permission granted. The lions were off the leash. The first volley didn't sound like a battle. It sounded like a thunderstorm trapped in a canyon. Thousands of bullets slammed into the stone walls of Saragarhi all at once. Inside, the 21 Sikhs took their positions at the loopholes. They were calm. They worked the levers of their Martini Henry rifles with machine-like precision. Fire. Reload. Fire. Reload. The British Martini Henry was a terrifying weapon. It fired a bullet the size of a man's thumb. When it hit a tribesman, it didn't just stop him, it threw him backward. For the first hour, the Sikhs held the wave back. But the Pashtun commanders, Gul Badshah and the others, were smart. They realized they couldn't win a shooting match against disciplined infantry. So, they exploited the fort's fatal flaw. Saragarhi had dead angles. If the tribesmen could get close enough right up against the base of the wall, the Sikhs couldn't shoot them without leaning over the edge and exposing themselves. Using the rocky terrain as cover, hundreds of warriors crawled forward, inch by inch, until they were huddled in the blind spots directly under the walls. They began to hammer at the wooden gate. They began to dig at the stones. Ishar Singh saw the danger. He ordered his men to fire carefully. But then, tragedy struck. Sepoy Bhagwan Singh leaned out just an inch too far to get a shot. A bullet caught him. He was the first to fall. As his body hit the floor, the reality of their situation settled in. They weren't just fighting to win anymore. They were fighting for time. The signalman, Gurmukh Singh, flashed a message to the main fort. Sepoy Bhagwan Singh killed. Enemy digging under the walls. The reply from Fort Lockhart was devastating. Unable to send relief. Hold as long as you can. They were officially on their own, and the enemy had just brought up the heavy ladders. By noon, the ammunition was running low. But the Pashtuns had a new weapon: fire. They gathered piles of dry scrub and wood, threw them against the wooden gate, and lit it. Thick, choking smoke filled the tiny outpost. The Sikhs were coughing, eyes watering, firing blindly into the haze. But the fire was just a distraction. While the gate burned, the tribesmen had finished their work at the dead angle. They had removed the foundation stones one by one. Suddenly, with a sound like a thunderclap, a section of the main wall collapsed. The dam broke. A flood of thousands of warriors poured through the breach. The shouting was deafening. There was no time to reload anymore. Ishar Singh roared the order: "Fix bayonets." The Martini Henry rifle became a spear. The 21 men didn't panic. They formed a line and charged into the wave. This is where the training of the Khalsa showed its true terrifying power. Outnumbered 50 to 1 in the courtyard, they fought like demons. One Sikh soldier, Sepoy Hira Singh, reportedly killed 6 men in close quarters despite being wounded. But sheer weight of numbers began to crush them. One by one, the lions fell. Havildar Ishar Singh saw the end coming. He ordered the remaining men to fall back to the inner signaling blockhouse, the last line of defense. Then, Ishar Singh did something legendary. He didn't run. He stood at the doorway of the breach, alone. He used his body as a shield to buy his men time to lock the inner door. Witnesses from the nearby ridges watched in awe. They said Ishar Singh fought like a man possessed. He refused to die. When his rifle jammed, he used his sword. He took 20 men with him before the mob finally pulled him down. By 2 p.m., the courtyard was quiet. The firing had stopped. Inside the small signaling tower, a 19-year-old Sepoy Gurmukh Singh was the only one left breathing. He could hear the heavy footsteps of the enemy climbing the stairs. He could smell the smoke of his burning brothers below. Any other man would have panicked. Any other man would have run. But Gurmukh Singh was a soldier of the 36th. He adjusted his mirror one last time. He tapped out a final message to Fort Lockhart. It wasn't a plea for help. It was a request. The message read, "Main gate breached, all others dead. Permission to stop signaling and pick up my rifle?" The British commander at Fort Lockhart, with tears in his eyes, signaled back, "Permission granted." Gurmukh didn't just throw the equipment down. Witnesses say he carefully packed the heliograph into its leather case. He stored it safely. Only then did he pick up his Martini Henry. The door burst open. The wolves poured in, but they found a lion waiting. Gurmukh Singh backed into the corner. He fired, point blank. Unable to get close to him, the tribesmen set fire to the tower itself. As the flames rose around him, Gurmukh Singh didn't scream in pain. He screamed the battle cry of the Khalsa. His voice echoed off the mountains. And then, the tower collapsed. At 3:30 p.m., the Battle of Saragarhi was over. 21 men had held back 10,000 for 7 hours. They had all died, but they had not failed. The next morning, the heavy artillery of the relief column finally arrived. They blasted through the tribesmen and recaptured the ridge. But when they reached Saragarhi, they stopped in silence. The fort was gone. But around the bodies of the 21 Sikhs, they found the true cost of the battle. Lying on the rocks were the bodies of over 600 enemy warriors. The math was staggering. For every one Sikh who died, they had taken 30 invaders with them. They hadn't just died. They had broken the back of the Pashtun offensive. Because of their sacrifice, the main forts of Lockhart and Gulistan were saved. The news traveled fast. It went from the mountains to the telegraphs, all the way to London. When the story was read out in the British Parliament, the entire House of Commons rose to their feet in a standing ovation. Even Queen Victoria herself bowed her head in respect. Every single one of the 21 men was posthumously awarded the Indian Order of Merit, at the time, the highest gallantry award available to an Indian soldier, equivalent to the Victoria Cross. Today, the Battle of Saragarhi is taught in military academies around the world. It is listed by UNESCO as one of the 8 greatest stories of collective bravery in human history. They call it the Sikh Thermopylae. Havildar Ishar Singh and his men proved a simple truth that day. You cannot judge a warrior by the odds against him. You judge him by how he stands when there is nowhere left to run. This has been a production of True Battlefield Chronicles. If you want to see more stories of impossible last stands, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. We will see you on the next battlefield.